in principle and in practice. We are committed to fostering, cultivating, and preserving a culture of diversity, equity, and inclusion, access, and belonging for all people. The League is an organization that respects and values the richness of our community and our members. The League's principles, public policies, actions, and advocacy articulate and document its support for an inclusive society. A key League principle is that the League of Women Voters believes every citizen should be protected in the right to vote. Every person should have access to free public education that provides equal opportunity for all, and no person or group should suffer legal, economic, or administrative discrimination. The League policy positions include that government has the responsibility to provide equality of opportunity for education, employment, and housing for all persons in the United States, regardless of their race, color, gender, religion, national origin, age, sexual orientation, or disability. The League promotes social and economic justice and the health and safety of all Americans, and we promote self-sufficiency for individuals and families. We support an equitable, quality public education for all children from pre-K through grade 12. These are just some of our issues that relate to the topic today. And as you can see, we are very committed to this, and I'd like to thank the speakers for what they're going to share with us today. And at this time, I would like to introduce Jacquelyn McMiller, who will be the moderator today. She is the first vice president of the League and also chairs our economic and social justice issues. Thank you, Jacquelyn.
Do you want to listen to this at all?
Now they're waiting up. I think they want to talk about people.
Wow, I'm loving this room. Oh my goodness. I am so happy to have everyone here to be able to share that's so dear to the hearts, to my heart, but most of all to the League of Women Voters hearts as well, in regards to diversity. Just a little housekeeping. Restrooms are around the corner. If you've never been here, welcome. But restrooms are around the corner. If you would like some drink, coffee, there are drinks out there if in the area, in the lobby area where you can
get in the car and go out now.
Sip and enjoy your time while you're here. Wi-Fi, if you need access to Wi-Fi, the paperwork is on your tables, and please, please, please take advantage of it, take notes, and enjoy yourself. I am so happy to see each one of you guys here today to share with us something that's so meaningful, especially in the climate that we're in today. The Q&A, all questions will be had at the very end. We're going to have these wonderful speakers, and they will sit here as panelists to be able to answer your questions after each one of the speakers have had their opportunity to share their knowledge, their thoughts as leaders in our community with you all. So write down your questions. We have little cards that we're going to be passing out just to take notes. If you're anything like me, if I don't write it down at that moment, it is gone. It is gone. So, and I call it grandma brain. I got 2 other grandbabies, 2 months and 3 months. So it's definitely gone. So without further ado, if you look at the, on the light blue paper, this gives you a little bit of an idea of what our agenda is going to be like and how things are going to be flowing. On here, this gives you a little bit of idea of some of the things that we're going to be having in the upcoming months, some of the things that the League of Women Voters would like to share with the community. So please pass this out, take a picture of it, be like all the young folks. Take a picture and share it with all of your friends. You know, everyone in your phone, share it with them so they can come and enjoy and be able to learn about the community and what the League of Women Voters has to offer as well. So one of our first speakers is Charlie Flores. He has been an activist within the community. He has led many, many other programs as far as BUPAC, many, Hispanic, part of the Hispanic community, and he's a leader within our community as well. He has been an advocate, a director, and community leader. Again, I want to introduce to you Charlie Flores.
Thank you. I'd like to, first of all, apologize because this is going to be the first time I've ever actually looked at my notes to read my speech, because the information I had to check and make sure that it's been updated and the dates are correct and all that. So I did spend a lot of times and I haven't memorized it. I'm very happy to be the first speaker, because when you get a call from Jacquelyn Miller and she tells you, we need you to come and speak, we'd like to invite you to League of Women's Voters. You come to the League of Women's Voters. She doesn't give you much leadership as far as speak about this. You meet two other people, Precious and Steve, you meet them, they're in the same position. So while I'm making my speech, they are worried that I'm going to cover points that I'm serious. Steve kept looking at my notes and I kept hiding the notes. So they're scared that I covered. But I'm speaking about diversity, help me out, wife, equity and inclusion, which means embracing everybody and giving everybody the opportunity to achieve goals in life that they should have. And my point is the Hispanic community. Does anyone here know when the US government, US Congress, did the first DEI bill in the history of the United States? Anybody give me a wild guess. 1920? You're not even close. 1865 was the first DEI. It was made, I'm sorry? It was made for widows, orphans, and disabled veterans coming home from the Civil War. That was 1865 when DEI first became an issue in the United States. It was worked on in 1921 when more soldiers were reduced from the military. It was again worked on 1928. In 1944, it affected the entire country. DUI covered the country from point to point, because in 1944, it merged with the GI Bill to have veterans coming home from the war go to school, government training, college, they had educational programs for people who were served to the government and needed new training, new jobs. Now I got to go. Oh, by the way, the two co-speakers worked on PowerPoints. They spent hours on them. They made great PowerPoints. If I knew any idea, if I had any idea how to make a PowerPoint, mine would have blown them away. I mean, it wouldn't have even been close. But I don't know how to do it, so I had to give it to, let them do it. Okay, the population of the United States is 340 million people. We are the third largest country in the world. Hispanics make up 60. You could have waved. Hispanics make up 65 million of that 340 population. Now, the truth is, we're not all illegal, but there are 14 million illegal Hispanics in the United States. The term illegal has changed recently, because it used to be when you arrived in the United States, you applied to a judge and you got permission to stay in the U.S. till they saw your case. Today, you arrive in the U.S. and they pick you up when you go to court to try to be legal. So it has changed. Hispanics come from 21 countries, 11 territories. The first language spoken in the New World, the first European language spoken in the New World was Spanish. We should have had better immigration laws, but they didn't. So they let anybody in. The first first explorers to find the Grand Canyon, or the first tourists to the Grand Canyon, were Spanish. Now, 160 million Hispanics are 160 million people are the workforce in the United States, people that have jobs in the United States. 31.8 million or 19% of them are Hispanics. Now, here's the problem with DEI in the current way it works with Hispanics. Hispanics, 19% of that workforce is in mostly food services, entertainment, recreation, training, and diversity programs to help people advance are only 4% of the program. Hispanics make up 11%. Okay, now, educational services, school teachers, teachers that teach people how to advance and move forward. That is used as a barometer of how the future is going to affect the workforce of people. The average educational, the average educational programs in the general population is 19.4% of the workforce. 19.4% of the workforce is working in education. Hispanics is only 11%. It's not that Hispanics are dumb. It's not that they don't go to school. It's the fact that DEI, as it's supposed to intended to work, never worked for them. Right now, Hispanics feel they're targeted by the government for discrimination. You hear cases. I know a girl who was a student of Ms. Grady and my wife. There was a student in high school of theirs. She got a full scholarship to a major private college, full scholarship. She went to college. She got her degree. If you go visit her today, you have to stop your car at the corner, call her and say, hey, I'm here. I'm coming to your house. Can I come in? Or you say, hey, I'm here. I'm with my wife. Can we both come in? Her family will not open the door because they are scared they're going to be arrested. And it's happening more and more. I know it's a little, my speech is a little bit, but this is the first one I've made in 10 years, so work with it. You can all say in a few years, I remember when Charlie made his first speech on his comeback tour. Now, everyone here has heard of the 14th Amendment, birthright. Now, what birthright is today is if you have a child in the United States or a United States territory, that child instantly is a U.S. citizen. Does not matter where his parents came from. It does not matter what nationality, it doesn't matter. The child was born in this country, he's a U.S. citizen or she's a U.S. citizen, period. In 1898, that law was tested in Congress, in the Supreme Court of the United States. 1898, they tested the birthright 14th Amendment. And they said, the Supreme Court said there was a law of the land. If you were born here, you're here. It was tested because it was designed for black people. It was designed to keep former slaves from having kids to vote. The idea was they did not want black people to vote. Today, we're looking at the same thing. It's targeted at minorities, Hispanics, blacks, and, you know, history, if you read history, we're only the beginning. Hispanics, once they get rid of us, who's next? There was a lady, let me see if my granddaughter. Now, my granddaughter, her two parents were born in the United States. Of her four grandparents, two were born in the United States, two have become U.S. citizens. My wife and I are born here in the United States. Our kids were born in the United States. So we have no problem, or we're not supposed to have no problem. But my granddaughter called and said, are they arresting my grandmother? One of their grandparents has a terrible accent. I mean, cannot get rid of it. And my granddaughter, and in this country, my pre-teenage granddaughter should not be concerned that her grandparents are going to get arrested for going to Target. So this is just what's happening in the community. And if you speak to people in the community, have I touched any of your issues yet? You can write, you know, I got a bunch of, you can make corrections. If Precious says, I'll be right back, I need some water, lock the door. She's leaving. Okay. My family, we're going on a tour in January, I think, a cruise into January or December. In my mind, I'm smiling, I'm going with it, I'm happy. I'm concerned, will I have trouble getting back in? You know of someone, people have a restaurant. One was, I forget what two countries they came from, that met here and have a very successful restaurant, plan to take a week off, leave the kids in charge of the restaurant. We're going on vacation back home. Neither one of them has been able to get back into the United States. Legal, US citizens. And by the way, if you think just because the law says it's legal and they can't do it, look up a thing, I know what you're going to say. Look up a thing called Operation Wetback. It's in the 1950s. Over 1 million US citizens were arrested and deported to Mexico. They targeted Arizona, Southern California, 1 million, because there was too many people of looking brown in the southwest US. Operation Wetback, look it up, they do it. Nobody stood up, nobody said, and it's the same thing that's occurring now. People are getting picked up, Palm Beach Boulevard, work vans being stopped and people arrested for no reason. And so how do you go spend your day proving you're a citizen? What do you do? Hopefully my speech is good enough to keep me out of jail. President Trump in 2025, January of this year, in 2025, called DEI illegal, immoral, a public waste, and rescinded, and he did sign and rescind all orders dealing with DEI by previous presidents. And he placed many employees on administration leave and subject to layoffs. The government, and this is the parts I got to read, the government eliminated all reference to, if you are a woman who served in the military, your reference on the women's, I forget what but on the website where it gives credit, when you look for government agencies and all that, all reference to women, blacks, Hispanics, gays, all reference were eliminated. People complained, women demonstrated. They said, okay, we'll put it back up. They put some of it back up. But there's a good chance. There was a group of women during World War II who would fly planes from the factory in California to England. They were unheard of. It's like Hidden Figures. Nobody ever heard of it till the movie came out. Well, a large number of women flew from California to England to drop off bombers, to drop off warplanes, to drop off equipment. They were, I think, waves or what? No, I forget what they were called. But their work was eliminated from the website, a Woman Memorial. They're gone. There's no longer any women that live old enough they're rare, they're few. Their history is gone. And this government is doing everything to make it farther into the back, into the darkness, and make it worse for people. So if your family was in part, anything you did to contribute to the government, to contribute to a war effort, anything you did is gone. Unless there's enough of you complaining to put some of it back, but not all of it. Brenda Sue Fulton was possibly the first person to say, the administration has hung a sign outside the armed forces that says, if you are not a white male, you're no longer welcome. Brenda Sue Fulton was the former Veterans Affairs Associate Director of Veterans Affairs, a department that serves people who serve the Army and are in the military and now need help. The second person in charge made that statement. She's no longer at the VA, by the way. I'm surprised, but she's no longer there. The government has also ordered probes into any organizations that practice DEI. If the League of Women's Voters practices, encourages minorities to sign up, encourages minorities to be part of the program, get ready for the investigation. And the House of Representatives, now, you know how everybody has an office. If you get a job, you got a place to work, to put your computer down, to sit down and work. The government has made all DEI offices in the United States illegal. If it's a DEI office that has anything to do with the federal government, it's been closed. And that is basically, combined with the raid on Palm Beach Boulevard this weekend, is basically why Hispanics are scared. I got to ask, I didn't see any Hispanics at the No Kings complaint parade or whatever it was called, the demonstration No King. And since I didn't see black people and I didn't see Hispanics. Well, not a lot, not a lot, not the ones who feel they should be there because they're scared to get picked up. And I'm glad you saw some. I didn't see any of the first one, but that was the only one I could make, the first one. I didn't make the last one, which hopefully in the next one I can make it. But that is basically why Hispanics are concerned. They're getting picked. If we're after the meanest and the dirtiest and the most immoral immigrants, why are we going to Home Depot where they're looking for work? You know, I mean, you know, they're working. And they're not doing a good enough job to take a union labor. If you spent your life in the United States and your biggest fear is that some guy who cannot, and I apologize if it hits home, but you're going against some guy who cannot read or write his own native language. What kind of education did you get in public school? This poor guy is just trying to learn the language. He's trying to do the best he can for his family, and you're concerned that he's taking food from your family? You need to go back to public school. Anybody got questions? Because I'm done. Yes, you can. Thank you, thank you, thank you, Mr. Flores. I appreciate it. Charlie. Thank you guys so much. What we're going to do is move on to our next speaker. And I'm going to take these off because when I take these off, I can't see anybody. It's a blur, but I can read without my glasses. Go figure. And I'll say that's because of grandma brain. But anyway, our next speaker is Precious Green Gunter. Precious Green Gunter holds a BS in Human Resource Management from the University of South Carolina and a Juris Doctorate from North Carolina Central University School of Law. Precious is a certified compliance and ethics professional through the Society of Corporate Compliance and Ethics and an adjunct legal and ethics instructor. She has worked as a staff attorney for Legal Aid of North Carolina for almost 5 years. She's certified compliance and ethics professional through the Society of Corporate Compliance and Ethics. And again, she has earned her Juris Doctorate from North Carolina Central University of Law. Ladies and gentlemen, would you please welcome Precious Gunter.
These are my exams. And six of the seven that have started are multifamily. One is.
I'm gonna go get some water. I'll be back. Good morning, good morning. And thank you all for inviting me and having me here this morning to talk about a topic and to try to help give strategies for how we can come together as a community. Now, I'm going to take it from a different angle from Charlie, so that's where I told him not to worry. I'm coming from from a compliance lens. So my background, as an attorney, I've practiced and I've been in the community here in Fort Myers for over 10 years. And my primary responsibilities now are compliance and ethics. So I'm a chief compliance and ethics officer. So I'm coming from the lens of, how do we ensure that we comply, but also stay focused on our purpose and our missions and our values and what we hold true to ourselves as we balance and navigate all of these different changes that have been happening across the country and in our local communities. So I've titled my presentation, Collective Compliance, Strategies for Building Resilience in Our Communities. Sorry, thank you, next slide. So navigating constant change. Charlie, did a great job of running off all of the different things that have been happening across the country. And of course, some of those things impact us here locally, whether that's state law changes, federal law changes, executive orders, guidance from different federal agencies, state agencies, press conferences, all of these different ways right now that we are learning new laws and new rules that we need to figure out how do we navigate these things. So change is constant. One of those things is that while some of the concepts that are being introduced or things that are changing may be fairly new, but change is not new. Right. One of the things, my father is a 26-year military veteran. So as I'm going through a lot of this, I've had lots of conversations with him. My dad, went to school during segregated times. I've had conversations with him of, tell me, like, how does this compare to your experience in the 50s or the 60s? My dad entered the military in the 60s. So I can't imagine, what that was like as a Black male going into the military during that period. So I'm like, tell me, how did you get through that? Give me some tips on how that was versus now, and how are you feeling as you navigate this? And some of you here can probably relate to some of those same things, and you probably can draw some parallels to what's occurring now as opposed to what was occurring back then. And I think Charlie also did a great job of showing that too, showing us all the way from the 1800s to present. So what we do know is that change is constant, and sometimes it's even a pendulum that kind of swings back and forth with that change, right? So sometimes we're maybe extremely right, and then other times we're extremely left. Sometimes we're kind of in the middle. Sometimes we go back and forth. And so as someone who constantly has to read laws, interpret laws, and come up with ways to operationalize these things throughout our communities, throughout our organizations, it's good to kind of have a compass on how we do that. And also in addition to that, there's heightened accountability and heightened scrutiny that comes with that sometimes. And so how do we challenge all of that? Oh, next slide, please. Thank you. So from rule following to purposeful leadership. So as a compliance officer, I'm always going to encourage you to follow the rules, right? But how do you follow the rules in a way that is purposeful? How do you stay true to what the values are of your organization, of your institutions, of the communities that you serve, or the communities that you represent, right? So one of the things, there's some concepts to think about. Anticipation and leading through change demonstrates maturity. So sometimes in certain roles, when we are leaders, people are looking at you. They're looking at us. They're looking at us to see how are we reacting to that change. And if we are stressed, if we are, freaking out, if we are not able to keep our composure during those times, then the people that we are leading, they will find themselves in that same state. And so how do we model that maturity? How do we model that behavior so that we can keep everyone focused and on track with what the purpose or the mission is, right? And I know, trust me, that is not always easy. There's a lot that comes with that, right? And how do you do that? As we've gone through a lot of things, I've had a lot of people come up to me and say, oh my gosh, Precious, you've handled all this with so much grace, right? And I think some of that is tied to my own personal beliefs and things that I was taught and things that were instilled in me on how I conduct myself on the day-to-day, regardless sometimes of what is happening around me. I have a young child, I have family members, I have friends, I have mentees, I have mentors, I have people that are looking to me and they're looking at me to see how I am reacting to these things. And so I have to keep that in mind. Now, it doesn't mean I don't go home and just unravel, right? Or scream and shout and curse, but right here, I wouldn't do that, right? And so that, that's very important. And one of the things to think about too is transparent communication reinforces credibility and trust. And so what I mean by that, if you combine anticipation and the trust, there are a lot of times when changes are happening, there's things out there, there's information out there before it becomes permanent or before it becomes effective. It's important within your communities and with your organizations to get that information out to the people. Whether that is so that you can know that this is coming and maybe it'll be on your ballot next year to vote. So a year in advance, you kind of can hear. If you're watching and you have your ears to the streets, you can hear of different things that are coming up. You can hear of what's next or what's coming down the pipe. And how do you get that information out to people so they can truly understand, so they're not realizing what impact or effect it'll have on them 10 days before it's about to go into effect, right? We're talking about a year before. There are things right now that we know are being discussed that will be on the ballot next year. So how do we get that information out? How do we build that trust? How do we build that anticipation to say, this is what is pending. This is what this means. This is what would happen if this goes into effect. We have to communicate that information out to people. And that's not just necessarily something that's happening on the federal level or state level. Those are things that can impact our organizations. You know, for me as a compliance professional, it could be some new ethics requirements. But how do I work with all the different partners that I work with on the day-to-day to make sure that they're informed so that we're anticipating what's going to happen? And do we have a plan to how to address this? So it's really important to make sure you're having those conversations early, because those are the things that help to build that trust and that credibility. Because when you don't do that, then they may say, well, Precious has known this. She's been sitting on this information for 6 months and she didn't tell us. And now she's coming in and saying we have to change all of these things. No, no, no. Look back at that email. Look back at that session. Look at that information I sent you and asked you to sign up. Please come, listen, right? The other thing is that everyone contributes to a culture of accountability. So how do we make sure that we're not only are we sharing that information, we're building that trust, and then we're making sure that we're holding each other accountable on how we implement those things, right? Another part of that that's important to me from the trust and credibility lens is opportunity for feedback. So one of the things I also am responsible and have been doing for 10 plus years is I do investigations of discrimination, harassment, EO programming and planning, in addition to compliance and ethics planning. But one of the things that's important to me is that I make sure that everyone has an opportunity to be heard, that everyone has an opportunity to give feedback or input in a process. Because sometimes we are stuck with the rules. We may not like the rules, but how can we make these rules work for everyone that is involved, right? Next slide, please. So when we're doing that, we're looking for feedback from everyone. We want to embrace the collective differences from everyone that is involved. One of the main things that I really want to talk about that's on this slide is the language that says understanding does not mean agreement. It means respect and it builds trust. And so one of the ways that I kind of personify this, I have a 4-year-old daughter. And Sissy has been trying me lately. So she's been putting me through it. I love her to death. But so one of the things I think about when I look at that phrase, she's the first thing that comes to mind. Because a lot of times I tell her to do something, and right now she has this little sass. So she'll say, fine, whatever. And she'll walk off. Now, so she's telling me, I understand what you're telling me I need to do. I understand you're telling me I need to pick up my shoes. I don't agree with it, but I respect you. So I'm going to go and I'm going to pick them up, right? Now, I always tell her, I'm like, my grandma would slap you for saying that, but I'm working on this gentle parenting thing, so I'm not going to react that way, right? But, you know, that's an example, right? So she may not agree with what I am saying, but she understands what I am saying, and she respects where it's coming from. So she's going to comply. Sometimes we call that malicious compliance, right? But she's going to comply. So it's important to understand that we embrace each other's differences, and that helps us to have more strength collectively. And that's really when we talk about diversity and we talk about diverse perspectives, and that's in all its forms. And what that means and what all of those different contributions mean, not only to our local communities, but to our society at large. So that's very important when we're looking at that. Next slide. So how do we navigate the human element of that though, right? So like I said, sometimes you have a lot of changes in rules and you may not like the rules, or you may not like the people who are making the rules. Or it could be both, right? And so how do you navigate that? We all have our own unique beliefs. Can someone tell me what the difference is between morals and ethics? Absolutely. Thank you. You can come have the microphone and you can finish the rest. But that is exactly correct, right? So morals are your internal beliefs. And then ethics are the societal beliefs or a policy, or it could be a company, it can be the state, local government, federal government, et cetera. And so there's always a balance there, right? So internally, you may have a belief or you may have morals that align one way, and then the society, the ethics or the requirements externally may not align with what your internal beliefs are. And so you can imagine the human complexity there, and how in the world do I navigate that? You know, that's one of the things when working with students or working with people who are going out to their careers, one of the biggest conversations now is finding organizations and companies that align with your personal beliefs. So a lot of times people, they want kind of that marriage between those two, where that hasn't always necessarily been the trend when hiring or when people go out into the workforce looking for jobs. And so that is good because that can help eliminate some of that conflict, but it's probably impossible to completely eliminate that conflict. I think at times all of us will have a situation where we run into a situation that presents itself where maybe something that is ethically required or a law or a rule does not align with our own internal compass or our own internal personal beliefs. But differing values can help create that understanding. So how do we talk about those things? How do we have conversations about those things? How do we create policies and rules and laws that align with that, but still includes everyone in the process? So it's important to be having that conversation. Shared purpose doesn't require sameness, it requires integrity. So that requires that respect, that understanding that aligns with that. Next slide, please. So fairness as a foundation of community. So when we talk about diversity, equity, and inclusion, what we are talking about is fairness. What we are talking about is equal opportunity. How do we make sure that everyone has the same opportunities? Now, I won't go into too much detail on the difference of equal opportunity versus equity, but just know that equity means that everyone does not necessarily need the same thing, right? So some people, in order for the playing field to be level, they may need additional things that other people don't need in order to have the same start, if that makes sense, right? So that's the difference between equity and equal opportunity. But compliance ensures consistency, transparency, and fairness. So if you are putting things in place and rules in place where you are making sure that everyone is included, everyone has equal access, everyone has an equal opportunity, and that they have whatever it is that they need in order to sustain or to be successful, doesn't mean everyone will be successful. That's a different conversation. But how do we make sure that they have the tools and whatever it is that they need for whatever environment it is that they are navigating at that time? Trust flourishes when people believe systems work for all. So you want people, we're talking about faith. We are talking about, do people believe in what we are saying? Do they believe when we are going out to these communities and we're having conversations and we're trying to educate them, we're trying to get them excited about voting or get them involved or make them learn more about things? If they don't have faith in the process, if they don't believe that the systems work, then they're not going to engage with the systems. You know, my grandmother, she's deceased now, but my grandmother never voted. And when I went to college, I remember one of the times I came home and I just had like this whole conversation with her about, you should vote and why don't you vote and all this. And she's like, you went off to college and now you think you're smarter than everybody. And I'm like, well, I am smarter than everybody in this room. But I couldn't say that because I told y'all what she would do. But, you know, I was thinking, but I really was trying to educate them. I really was trying to say, but my grandma was born in 1920. You know, and so when I'm telling her why I think it's so important to vote and why she needs to vote, because at that time I had just had my opportunity to vote in my first election. And so I was so excited and I was thrilled and I wanted all my family to be engaged. she didn't believe that the systems worked. You know, from what she had experienced in her life, she did not have faith in the system. And so it's important to make sure that we help people have that faith, that we show you know, when I'm asked to do events like this, it's always important to me to stand up in front of rooms and have this opportunity, because I believe I can show people, while sometimes the systems are broken, but I can show people that they can work, that I am an example of how it can work, how we can defy odds, how we can come together, how we can take advantage of these opportunities, how we can help build community. And so it's important for me to get in front of groups. It's important for me to have other young aspiring leaders to see me so that they can have an opportunity or know, like, hey, you know, I can do that, or I can be that one day. And for some people, they've never seen that. They've never had that opportunity. And so it's important to help us, as you know, as us being part of community together, that we help people believe in the systems. You're here, you're part of this organization because you do believe in the system, even though at times it may be broken, but you have faith in the system. That's what keeps you going every day. That what's keep you going and being part of programs and organizations like this, because you do believe that maybe sometimes you won't see it in your lifetime, but that at some point it will help some future generation, or that at some point it will work. Next slide, please. I promise I'm wrapping up. Leading with integrity and hope. And so I've already touched on this a little bit, but compliance safeguards fairness, it inspires trust. This again is how people are looking at us and how we are modeling that behavior, and how can we make sure that we are leaders that are spreading that message in our communities. Next slide. Resilience, perspective, and purpose. Next slide. And so this is important because this is where I said sometimes you may go home and you might unravel, right? I am not a mental health counselor, not a specialist at all in that area, but this type of work is not easy. It is not easy. You know, when you look at a lot of our historic leaders that have led big movements related to these topics that we're here discussing today, a lot of times, you know, a lot of times statistically, when I look at them, a lot of them died early, whether they were killed, stress, heart attacks, strokes, you know, all of that. There is a lot that comes with carrying this crown or carrying this weight, right? And so we have to make sure, one, that we are modeling self-care, so that you are doing things to make sure that you're taking care of yourself, and that also you don't lose your way, you know, in the process either. You can't allow anger, you can't allow fear, intimidation, and those things to be what are guiding you through that process. Dig deeper into what are those ethics, what are those values, what are those morals that guide you, and lean into those to model that maturity, to model that behavior, to help get you through difficult times whenever we have breaks in our system. You want to make sure that you are focused on, you know, overcoming, and then what is putting things back into perspective. And at times it can shift. Trust me, I've been guilty of that. But I have to refocus. You have people watching you. We have a greater cause that we have to make sure that we stay on track for. So change can be tiring. It can pause, refocus, and remember your purpose. Celebrate small steps towards progress. You know, one of the things for me, as small as this may sound, I'm a huge checklist person. So I keep notes, little to-do little reminders in my phone. And I promise you, if I can just hit a check mark, it really makes me feel so good. It could be something as simple as, let me just put on here that I put my shoes on today. I'm gonna check that off. And I get excited, like, oops, I accomplished something, right? Because there's some days that I look at that list and I'm like, I didn't get anything done on this list today, right? So, but those small steps, reward yourself for all of those small things, especially when you know you have bigger purpose and bigger things at play. So you want to make sure you reward those small steps to progress, because you go back to 1800s or 1880 when Charlie is talking about the first implementation of DEI related programs to today. And, you know, if you look at all the programs that have been put in place and all the work that has been done in those 200 years, in 1880, they probably would have never thought that would get this far. So those were really, really small steps that ultimately got us there. And so how do you maintain that? You know, how do you keep that focus, that 200 years ago, they would have never thought of having what we have today. The past 2 summers, I had the opportunity of working with, it was a program that we had where we brought over African fellows for leadership programs. And so these individuals were all leaders within their respective African countries. And so we partnered with them on a lot of different projects or leadership projects or nonprofit organizations that they had started pertaining to different issues or things in their countries. And, I can't tell you when a lot of them found out that I worked in the EO space, so many of them came to me and wanted assistance with programs that they were creating in their countries. And it was things like ADA, American Disabilities Act, that we've had in place in the United States for a very long time, that they don't have in their countries at all. There are no accessibility laws. There are, no requirements pertaining to that. Children are being kicked out of school or not allowed to attend school because they have disabilities. They have no programs that support them in that regard. There are countries that still practice gender mutilation. And there are people that were coming to me to say, can you help us figure out how to create programming for this? And so those are the types of conversations and the moments that really help me refocus, that really help me put things into perspective sometimes from all the chaos that I feel is happening around me, and why it's very important to keep going and to not give up, right? Every act of integrity strengthens the collective, and progress isn't perfection, it's persistence. So stay strong as we navigate changes in rules. Next slide, please. So thank you so much. I think I probably went over my time a little bit, so I'm sorry. But thank you all so much.
Thank you, thank you. Let's give her another hand. Awesome. Now I have to tell you, Precious, with your daughter, now I see where she gets it from. Uh-huh. It's like my mom told me, I hope that the Lord just let me live to see you go through what I went through with you. So it comes back on you. It definitely does. Thank you so much, Precious. That was wonderful. What we're going to do is move on. And I want to introduce to you guys this young man. And I can say young man because I've been on this earth a little bit longer than you have. Steve Marcantonio is a Southwest Florida community leader, coach, and advocate whose work sits on the crossroads of ethics, equity, and civic engagement. He serves as vice president of the Board of Visuality, co-founded the Southwest Florida Rainbow Coalition, and is an architect of faith over fear. I love that. When I saw that, I'm like, oh. A regional interfaith dialogue connecting LGBTQ plus Floridians with welcoming faith communities. A student of history and personhood, Steve is completing his Master of Liberal Arts at Johns Hopkins University, building on undergraduate studies in ethics studies and women and gender studies with a minor in multicultural leadership. His academic work explores the legal, economic, and moral dimensions of inclusion in American democracy and society, linking lessons from multiple historical arenas to modern debates on equity and civic trust. Beyond academic, Steve is a small business owner and a wellness coach certified by Duke Health and Wellbeing, bringing an evidence-based whole person approach to the space. Steve believes that personal well-being and collective justice are inseparable. He is also in process to become ordained clergy with the Metropolitan Community Churches. His approach to leadership emphasizes integrity, empathy, and the courage to confront biased behavior wherever it hides. Steve's presentation for the League of Women Voters is here, and we want to welcome Steve, and we want to be able to listen to everything that he has, and I'm going to go over how all of this ties up, so I can't wait for it. Steve, thank you so much for speaking, and you have the mic.
Good morning, everybody. I would have made my bio shorter if I had known that we were reading it. Appreciate that though. Okay, so I have notes and a PowerPoint, if my notes will stay on this thing here, because I can and will get off track. So if anyone needs to just, Eddie, if you have to like time out, I'm over time, it's like 1:30 in the afternoon. I'm totally willing to just stop talking. Okay, so howdy. My name is Steve Marcantonio. My pronouns are he, him, his, and I am so grateful to be here with all of you this morning. Like we got to hear in my introduction, my professional, my academic, and my personal kind of life has been steeped in DEI. I entered the University of Colorado Boulder in 2013, actually as an advertising major, and I was taking a class in the ethnic living and learning community about multiculturalism and just found a real passion for it. And so before the end of my first semester freshman year, I switched my major to ethnic studies and added a women and gender studies second major, and I've just found a real home in that. And so I've been doing that ever since, and I'd like to think that I live and breathe it. Slide. Okay, so my intention is to just have a kind of brief overview of like what the heck is DEI and what role does it play in our democracy, which I think has been touched on so beautifully by my two new friends here who spoke before me. So democracy, and this is all, I just want to give the disclaimer, I'm a part of a lot of organizations. Everything I'm going to say is just my own experience and opinion. So I believe that democracy is the practice of ethically shared power. What does it mean when we get to have, everybody gets a turn at the steering wheel? Everybody gets to have a voice at the table where we're envisioning a shared future together. What does that mean and what does that look like? Part of why I was so excited to speak to the League of Women Voters is because I read that booklet that we had out here before, and I really vibed with the idea that all levels of government share responsibility for equality of opportunity in education, in housing, and in employment. And these kinds of things are democracy keeping its promises to its people. Why would we be structured under a hierarchy if that didn't benefit or protect us in some way? And so that's kind of what that is about. And so any exclusion in a democracy is inherently unethical. Any democracy that excludes is an unethical democracy. I would argue that it's probably not actually a democracy, but I don't have that much time. We have to, if we're going to share a vision of a future where people can build the life that suits them best according to what they think and believe. We were talking earlier about morals versus ethics. For people to be able to build a life that's in alignment with their moral compass, we all have to be part of that and be inclusive of that, which means sometimes sitting with discomfort, which we'll talk about in a second. Slide, please. Okay, so what is diversity? So diversity is something that reduces blind spots in a democracy and kind of highlights issues before they become injustices. So diversity is the voice in the room that says, hold on, this is going to be an issue before it's an issue, and allows kind of the group to make its decisions to prevent anyone from feeling unwelcome or harm coming to anybody. Homogeneity breeds systemic fragility. That's like so important, I think, because now, especially in certain segments of the media and unfortunately even our government, there's an idea that sameness is what is going to be the ticket to safety and to prosperity. We see this in natural systems, we see this in ecosystems, and we see this in social systems all the time. Sameness is easier to break than difference. Diversity breeds wisdom. I mean, there is a value to slowing down the conversation and making it richer by including more voices in it. And then finally, something that I think is really important to remember when we're talking about DEI is that even though it doesn't feel like it, exclusion is often structural. And so what that means is like for example, curb cuts, I think of when you walk onto a sidewalk where it goes down smoothly into the street, those were actually something that people had to fight for, folks who use wheelchairs and walkers and canes for mobility. And they actually, it developed like a whole new field of study in urban design because it was so amazing to folks who pay attention to those things, how much it benefited people who weren't in the original category that it was intended for. So inclusion must also be by design. Slide, please. Thank you. So equity. Equity is interesting because it is close cousins with equality, only off by a few letters. And so I think that sometimes we get confused about like, what is the difference there? Are they the same thing? Are they interchangeable? So equality says everybody gets the same. You get 1 pound of rice, whether you're feeding 10 or 100. And equity asks, what does each person need to thrive? It meets people where they're at, which is another reason why I really enjoyed the invitation to come speak to you all today, because the League of Women Voters actually has in their governing documents a framework for kind of what does equity look like. And that's that equality of opportunity position whereby we all need to work together to make sure that folks, no matter their background, no matter what they look like or where they're coming from, that even though we might be starting at different places, that we all have the same opportunity to reach the same end goal. And then equity, I like to think of equity as fairness in motion, or if you are an academic nerd like me, praxis, which is where the rubber meets the road. How are we turning abstraction and theory into lived reality? How are we building it in the world that we actually exist in? And then inclusion. So inclusion is, I like to practice inclusion by every day trying to expand the circle, by trying to expand my definition of what we means, of who my neighbor is. Inclusion brings us from tolerance to participation and belonging. And so, and then also to skip to that very last bullet point there, it's rights into relationships. So we can kind of think of inclusion as a difference between, oh, you have a right to be here, we all have a right to be here, this is a free country, versus come on in, you're welcome here, sit down, have a good time. These things are, in my mind, vastly different from one another, right? It's kind of like when you're like in a group of people and they're all gonna like go have lunch. They're like, oh, well, you can come if you want to. It's not really inclusion, is it? I see this, I've actually seen this recently as I am trying to build Faith Over Fear, an event that I'm putting together to connect LGBTQ plus people in Southwest Florida with welcoming and affirming faith communities. And that has been a series of conversations and dialogues where maybe previously there was fear, now there is understanding and an attempt to kind of see each other authentically. Slide, please. Okay, so dun dun dun, privilege. So what makes DEI a sticky topic and what makes DEI very uncomfortable for a lot of people, especially people who have a lot of overlapping demographics with me, is that we tend to think of privilege, calling out privilege, identifying our own privilege as an exercise in shame. Oh gosh, I have this and I'm supposed to be ashamed of it because the spotlight's on me. Want to interrupt that, disrupt that. First of all, I think that we need to reframe privilege as unsought, unearned advantage. There's a scholar, Peggy McIntyre, she wrote this really fabulous article in the 80s called Unpacking the Invisible Knapsack, which I have, I believe, 25 copies of printed up here if any of y'all are interested, or I can email to the group that they can send to all of you. And it is a list of things that she's a women's studies professor at Wellesley, that she realized that she was able to just kind of count on as part of this like collection of unearned advantages that she had never realized before because she wasn't looking through that lens. So the list includes things like I can go shopping alone with a reasonable expectation that I won't be followed and harassed. I can do well in an activity without being called a credit to my race. When I think of privilege, I think about the fact that as I am LGBTQ, I'm gay, but I am cisgender, which means my gender identity aligns with the body I was born into. And so that's a form of privilege because when I use a restroom, nobody's like, huh? And so I didn't ask for that. I didn't seek that, right? if I had built the system wouldn't look like that. But I also didn't earn it, and I have it nonetheless. And so it kind of takes it doesn't mean I'm completely not culpable or complicit in perpetuating systems, but it means that I didn't build them. And that spending time on shame is wasted energy and wasted time, when instead I can be thinking about, gosh, instead of being woe is me because I have this thing other people don't have, decentering myself and deciding how am I going to make sure that we all can get it. So privilege does not mean that you had no struggle. All the time I talk to people, including my own family, who they're like, oh my gosh, I can't be privileged because of this thing or that thing. Privilege does not mean that you haven't struggled. It just means that some of the struggles that other people have experienced because of what their background is, what they look like, where they come from, that you won't experience because of your background, because of what you look like, because of where you come from. Another interesting way to think of this, I think this is also from Peggy McIntyre, is that it's an unsought tailwind. So privilege is the difference between the wind pushing at your back versus walking against the wind. It's a propelling force. And so seeing privilege, calling out privilege, and then not taking offense or becoming defensive when someone calls out our privilege is not, again, an exercise in shame. It's an exercise rather in precision, right? And democracy needs a precise measurement to thrive. How do we know to address a problem if we won't call it out, or if we willfully ignore it when it's brought to our attention? Seeing privilege, calling it out is a prerequisite to justice. Again, in my opinion, it's something that is necessary. How can we sit in community with one another if I don't acknowledge that I have power that you can't access yet, right? Slide, please. Alrighty, so who gets to shape the we? This is actually something that I'm studying right now in my master's program. Privilege and inequity, they really distort whose stories count, right? Whose experiences are thought of as universal, for example. Like when we say, oh, I saw a man. Who gets to get just, let's say, the label man without any qualifiers? A short man, a gay man, on and on and on and on, right? All these other things. Whose experience is universalized? Whose experience is normalized? Whose experience is othered and made abnormal, right? So the League of Women Voters really, I think, has a long history of these kinds of tests of who gets to shape the we. So any of you who know this, I'm not trying to preach to the choir, I promise. But the League of Women Voters, I actually learned in preparing for this presentation, supported access to fair housing policies very shortly after the assassination of Reverend Dr. King, when they were still almost universally unpopular among white voters. I think that we have a tendency to kind of whitewash the history of that. Like Reverend Dr. King was not a widely popular figure when he was assassinated, nor were the things that he stood for. That's a more recent development, unfortunately. So the League at that time, when they were supporting access to fair housing, they weren't asking themselves, is this popular? They were asking themselves, is this right? Is this the correct thing to do? Is this one of the actions that we can take as people, maybe with a measure of privilege, even to be able to be in rooms like this, right? To create an equality of opportunity for everyone. So right now, a lot of folks have referenced the tumultuous time we're in. I choked up both times. Charlie referenced example of the young woman who needs to be called before she'll answer the door. That's just, for me as an American, that is shameful. I experience a lot of shame about that. Ooh, getting choked up right now. Sorry, y'all. So democracies fail not when the cruel are loud, but rather when the kind are quiet, when the compassionate are quiet, when the conscientious are quiet. And so don't be quiet. Don't be quiet. Okay, slide. Thank you. Okay, so allyship. So I always like to, because like, I don't want everybody to be like, oh, womp womp, the system is built against us. No, there are things we can do, okay? So what does allyship look like? So to be an ally, that's an action word, right? Okay, so like for example, I'm Italian because my ancestors were Italian. I don't have to do anything to be Italian. I do have to do things to be an ally. That's not just a label I get to claim and then just sit on my rear, okay? So these are just 3 simple things that I like to practice honestly as often as I can and check myself on as often as I can to see if I'm being a good ally. So first is to listen beyond likeness. We are conditioned socially, and it's also how kind of the less developed parts of the human brain work, that you are more inclined to listen intently to someone who looks like you, to someone who looks like people with whom you've had previous positive experiences, et cetera, et cetera. Interrupt that system of implicit bias, y'all. Seek out unsettling voices. Seek out conversations with people with whom you disagree. I'm not saying anybody here should sit down with like an avowed member of like a hate group or put themselves in danger. But when you and I agree on 99 things but disagree on one, let's talk about the one, right? Use your platforms proportionally. So this goes back to folks with privilege. If you have your foot in the door, don't let that close behind you. Don't pull up the ladder behind you. We are not crabs in a bucket, y'all. So lend access. If you have the microphone, lend access, and then don't overspeak the people if they say something with which you disagree. Lend the access and allow that to just be what it is. And then practice policy empathy. So remember that when we're voting, all of the people that we vote for, all of the policies that we vote for, they impact real lives, even if they're not our real life. And then also don't just feel, but vote as well. I think that sometimes we can get overwhelmed, with this kind of rise of ugliness. I think outward ugliness that we're unfamiliar with in this country and in American culture. It can be very overwhelming. So let's not just feel, but let's also legislate. Let's organize, and let's speak out. Slide, please. So finally, DEI is the moral architecture of democracy. That's my claim that I'm making to you all. That's what I strongly believe. Diversity is what gives us our sight. It allows us to see things that maybe we can't because of our experiences. Equity gives us the balance and the calibration to kind of say, now, how do we make our intention into lived reality? And inclusion is how we put that into action. And it gives us the strength and the endurance to continue to thrive as communities and as a democracy. Empathy, I believe, is democracy's soul. This system works because it is a collection of 340 plus million people all kind of not getting together, but kind of putting their heads together and saying, you know what, I don't know you, you're all the way 3,000 miles away, but we're in this together in one way or another. And then finally, democracy is not guaranteed. I think that a lot of the anxiety and overwhelm that folks feel is that this stalwart thing that we thought was, built on a marble foundation is actually built on wishes and hopes and casual agreements. And so it's not guaranteed. We earn the future, and we do that by expanding the circle of belonging every chance we get, every opportunity we get, and listening actively. Slide. This is my bibliography. Thank you all.
Awesome, awesome. Don't stop, don't stop. Keep it going. I wanted to share while I was taking a few notes, and I'm going to make this really quick because we're going to go into the Q&A. There should be some cards on your table. So if you guys have written down some questions that you may have, I want to be sure to be able to go get to those questions. But Charlie shared with us views from a historical aspect to the current environment from the Hispanic perspective. He has helped us see and have empathy from a group of people that are existing in fear. And we didn't see that. We don't experience it that. I certainly don't. So he was able to share that. But then Precious followed up and shared with us, how can we disagree with policies that we truly disagree with, but also be able to follow them? And how do we deal with those that work against our own moral values? And then Steve followed up with the fact that how do we design inclusion by expanding our that circle of belonging of people that may not look like us because of the fact that they have a different life experience. So I think that kind of comes back full circle. So this is an educational piece that we do with the League of Women Voters, and I thought it was excellent of how we can start with something and understand what's happening in the world today, also face, and how do we deal with that ethically, from an ethical and moral, how do that conflict that we have, but also have laws that we truly have conflicts with, and how do we deal with that? And Steve kind of followed up with the fact that it comes with diversity, belonging, and understanding that circle of belonging. So without further ado, we're going to go into our Q&A session, and our panel is seated right now. And if you guys have any questions, I think I have one right now. Oh, good. All right. So I'm not sure who this is actually directed to. However, whichever one of you guys may want to answer it, I'm good with that. Has DEI been used more effectively for white men than other races as people of color? Has DEI been used more effectively for white men than other races or people of color? Charlie?
Thank you. In 1944, the GI Bill and DEI got together. The fact is, 1944, the only one that was going to get help from the government were white men. It wasn't anything, they didn't change anything. It was just a fact. It has been a struggle since 1944 to give non-white men the same equality as white men. So that struggle continues. So it'll take decades before we can reach the equality of because there were over 5 million soldiers came back and were affected by the GI Bill. So it'll take decades before those numbers are wiped out.
Hold on one second. I'm going to go to this with the ones that have the cars here. How does one immigrate legally? How does one immigrate legally? Charlie?
If you get to the United States and you go before a court and ask to become a citizen, I know of a man who came from Canada, economically well off. I mean, very well off. He had a company his father had a company in Canada. He started a company here in the United States, doing very well. He's college educated. You know who I'm talking about. College educated, had the financial resources that if they went into an appointment, they said you need $3,000 for the next step, he could cut them a check right there on the spot or pull out the money in cash. It took him 12 years without going to an attorney, doing it himself, educated and qualified to do it by himself. It took him 12 years before he became a U.S. citizen. And I know people, and if you notice when someone gets picked up and Jose got deported. He's been in the United States 35 years. He's been working for 35 years trying to become a U.S. citizen, doing the questionnaires, doing everything. And it's simply, if you're not, if it takes a lifetime.
Wow, thank you so much. That was a good question. And I really appreciate whoever asked, because I don't think anyone really knew the timeline and how long it really truly takes. This is for Precious. Compliance to what? And it kind of follows up with this question. With the dismantling of DEI, does investigation of discrimination become mute or invalid? I'll leave that for you.
No, thank you. And that is a great question. And no, it does not. So we do still have federal and state protections regarding discrimination. So there still are protected categories. You still have Title VII, which is part of the Civil Rights Act that prohibits discrimination based on race, color, religion, national origin, age. You have Age Discrimination Act. We have Pregnancy Discrimination Act. We have Title II, which covers disability discrimination. Title VI, which covers discrimination in educational programs based on race, color, and national origin. So there are still a lot of protections in place based on federal discrimination or state discrimination. Where you could have some differences is how that discrimination is interpreted, or how those different processes are defined or shaped. So for instance, at one point in time, we had guidance that talked about microaggressions and how microaggressions could be evidence of discrimination. Part of the anti-DEI programming is that some of the conversation is that microaggressions are not real, that those aren't real lived experiences, or that they don't amount to discrimination or privilege or some of the other things that have been discussed. But there are still federal and state laws that prohibit discrimination.
Well said. And there was a question on here is where you're from. And I just wanted to let everyone know, it's my understanding you're from Carolina, right?
Yes, I am from South Carolina.
Okay,
But
they want you to move here.
I
So
live
wanted to
here.
let
No,
them
that's
know
what I was
that
gonna
you
say.
are
I live here. I've lived here for 10 years. Yeah.
So I just, whoever asked that question, she is here. We got her. She's ours. She's ours now. Okay, there's a question about how can you access the recording of this? On the League of Women Voters website, you'll be able to do it. We're also on YouTube. You'll be able to access it from there as well, and on Facebook. So there will be a link that will be posted as well. This is a good question. How to address the difficulties in my own family. For example, Charlie Kirk responses. So I don't know who may want to respond to that. If they want to touch upon that, because I have my own ideas as well. Yes.
Alrighty, I can, I don't know if I'm speaking into this microphone. Am I? Okay. I come from a blended political family where we exist on like the spectrum from very far one side to very far another side. And I have had a lot of difficult conversations of this kind of ilk. I was an ethnic studies student when all of the beginning of the Black Lives Matter movement, 2013, 2014 happened. And that engendered, as I'm sure you all can imagine, some difficult conversations with people who weren't aware of their privilege, which was based in race. And so I think that it's important to approach those with grace. Remember that the person who's in front of you is your uncle or your cousin or your child or whatever, and that they're still that person no matter what beliefs that they're holding inside. And then also, I think it goes back to what I mentioned earlier about like if we can agree on 99 things and then disagree on one, even if that's a big one, right? We can talk about it. We can be in that kind of difficult space and wrestle with that, but we can't live in the one thing that we disagree about and completely ignore or disregard the 99 things that we have in common. It's that kind of binary thinking that makes these kinds of conversations less frequent and less likely in places like Southwest Florida.
Thank you. Thank you. Very well said. Well said. This is for Precious. How do you start a conversation with your employer to implement DEI practices without calling it DEI?
Well, I think there's a lot of things at play there. I think that could be a whole nother training session. But so one, I think you have to look at what type of employer are we talking about? Are we talking about a government employer or are we talking about a private employer? Private employers, of course, are not going to be held to some of the same standards and responsibilities that public or government entities would be held to. So Charlie talked about the federal government and some of the different actions that have been taken on the federal side in relation to DEI, as well as things that we have happening at the state level across the country related to DEI. So first you have to look at, what type of organization are we talking about? And then from there, I think what's always important is every organization, no matter whether it's state, federal, private, they always have missions, values, some type of organizational statement or purpose. And so I think always you want to center and shape and lean into what is that organization's missions, their values, and their purpose. And then how do you shape the needs of the organization to those purposes and to those missions? And that's where you're looking at the people, you're looking at who works for the organization, you're looking at who the organization serves, the communities that it reflects, the business partners, all of those different things. And what are the needs within those communities? What are the needs within that organization? And you shape it and you frame it from there, because then you're looking at fairness, you're looking at opportunity, you're looking at how can we do these things? And so from the private standpoint, a lot of times when I'm having those conversations, I shape the conversation around dollars, because a lot of times on the private side, if it's not a nonprofit organization, then generally money is how you're going to get your foot in the door, right? So we can show by maybe how not having these types of programs, or maybe by how not having these types of opportunities, how is that impacting our bottom line? And so what kind of things can we put in place to address that? On the other side, again, what are the needs? What are people saying that they're lacking? What are people saying that they're not receiving from this organization? And how do you shape and fit those into our practices, our policies, and the way that we operate and conduct business? So, you know, it's a lot that kind of goes into that, but how you put that together, how you present it. And it takes a lot of time. You have to get that buy-in. And having that conversation, how to get that buy-in, those are some of those small steps that I talked about earlier. You know, research. For me, you know, my background, I work a lot in education. So research, statistics are always the first thing that people want to hear. They want to see charts. They want to see numbers. They want to see, show us that what you're saying is true. Show us that by not doing this, this is the impact, and how do we shape that? So that's generally how I start.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. And it's my understanding that many of since they decided to axe the whole DEI, many companies have decided to just do exactly that. They maintain it. My nephew works for Amazon, and they have kept the same policies, but just named it something different. You know, just as simple as that. Thank you guys so much. We do have a couple of more questions, but I want to make sure. Oh, Mr. Robinson? You had your hand up?
I did write it down. But diversity, equity, and inclusion is not really what it says. Diversity, equity, exclusion, that's the way it started. From the beginning, after the wars, you pointed out that it was men, and particularly the men who were coming from the wars. They excluded women, everyone else. It was men. So that's typically what we have done with diversity and exclusion and inclusion. We have excluded.
Yes, and I agree.
The problem is our lack of homogeneity. The more heterogeneity we become, the more problems we have with our democracy and fragility. As we noted,
Yes.
that change, as you mentioned, is inevitable. Unless we have homogeneity where privilege is distributed to everyone equally, we will always have a necessity for change and the problems we're having now. This is just exactly what happens. We took advantage of our lack of homogeneity to extract privilege. That is what 2025 was all about. Should we have seen that coming? Yes, we should have. Have we been working to prevent what's happening now? No, we have not. They took advantage of our division.
Well, they say
And we are
divide and we
not
fall.
doing anything about that.
Yes. And this is something that we're going to be working on, and this is all about what the League of Women Voters is all about. Let this afternoon not be an end, but a beginning. I hope the conversations that we have here today, that we've had, kind of ripples out into our neighborhoods, our workplaces, the schools, and our daily lives. You attended here because you care about what happens in this world. You care about what's happening every day. So let today be the day that you commit to making a difference and taking action. So right now, I want to say the League of Women Voters of Lee County, we help empower voters and defend democracy through education and advocacy. I'm also on the nominating committee, so I'd like to open up the doors of membership. We need leaders that we can nominate. You can either support, be in a supportive role, or you can take that leadership role that each and every one of us that you see up here are doing right now. But we need people to work with us, to join us. And I just want to say this real quickly. When a child is born, their life begins with a date of beginning, a dash, and then an end date. We all remember, and we're all remembered by what we do within that dash. Let yours stand for action. Let your dash stand for action, impact, and hope, and for a better community. Thank you again for being a part of this journey that the League of Women Voters are on. I'd like to turn the mic over to our president and our lovely president here. And again, thank you so much for coming. And she's going to share a few words with you, as well as our wonderful Eddie Stahl.
Thank you. I'm going to be brief. I think that first, I would like to thank the speakers, and I think that we all have learned a lot, and you've given us important perspective and insights and a way to move forward. I'd also like to thank Jacquelyn and Eddie, who planned this program. They were charged with elevating this issue, refocusing, and change the negative narrative, because, and that was a big challenge. I think we have accomplished that today. So I thank you all very much. We do try to stay on time, so I'm just going to quickly move through a couple points. We do have additional educational meetings coming up. November 16th, Bittersweet Muck, impact of sugarcane burning in Florida. That will be a movie showing at the Alliance for the Arts. And back in this room on December 6th, Why Public Schools Matter, a look at Florida school choice options. And that program will go back to many of the issues we've talked about today, because education is a foundation for our society, and we need to make sure that everyone has the opportunities to have a quality education. The League advocates on a number of issues. Just quickly, and all of these are on the national website for the League. Stop the government shutdown. We're in a terrible situation right now, and people are suffering. Say no to mid-cycle redistricting. Say no to bills that make it harder to register to vote. And in this county, in November, all citizens will have an opportunity to vote on single-member districts for the Lee County Commission. So stay tuned on that. All of you, I hope you are registered and you will vote and work with us. I learned a new word today, allyship. I love that, and there are many ways that we can work together. We'd like you to be a member of the League if you'd like to join, but we would also like to partner with you and work together on the issues that are important to all of us. So we are going to adjourn this part of the meeting, and we have some time for networking, so you don't have to exit the room right now. And then at 11:30, we'll be having a meeting to talk about outreach to younger voters, and everyone is invited to attend. And I'm getting the food. Oh, okay. Thank you. We are a team. We work together, and everyone knows I forget. So we do have food in the back for those of you who are staying, and please enjoy that. And normally we do an around the board, and we really don't have time to do that, but I would like to give a shout out to Nancy Leverance, who is our event coordinator and also supplies food for our meetings. So thank you, Nancy. And we have a questionnaire that is available if you'd like to complete it, to tell us what your concerns are and what you'd like to do to work with the League. So thank you for that. I'll put this. Okay. Thank you all very much.